Hello, everybody. It is a Wednesday. That means one thing. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. Normally, you're expecting supernatural news and Parashare. But today, it's a little bit different. So, we're coming off of Michigan Paracon. We're coming off of a birthday, just saying. You know, every once in a while, I get to take a day off, right? And we have a couple of co-hosts that are down and out. You know, kids in life get in the way. That's kind of how things go. So, we've kind of come to a little bit of a grinding halt here on Wednesday, and that's okay. So we're going to go 1 week without supernatural news. That's fine. So we're going to have a birthday wish day. Why a birthday wish day, you may ask? Well, you know, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I made a couple of wishes. And I had guests that I absolutely wanted on the program. And I stated it when I had this particular guest on, that this guest was in, I would say, my top 5 of guests that I absolutely wanted to talk to. And I had a topic that I wanted to put past this guest that had to do with the paranormal and the supernatural. And this guest has had paranormal and supernatural experiences. And really, this show came together quite brilliantly. And I thought it was one of the more interesting shows that I've ever done. I wanted to replay it for you today. I think really it's a show that might have been underestimated and maybe not quite appreciated by the audience the first time around. So I wanted you to take a second, listen to it, and really get the idea of what the concept is. You know, when we talk about creative people in our society, artists in our society, sometimes those of us who are left-brained don't really think about what it takes to be right-brained and creative. We don't grasp what it takes to create something out of nothing. And I struggled to think to myself, well, does that come from human ingenuity? Is that truly a human thing? Or does it channel? Do we take that from a source? Is that God-given? Is that spirit-created? Or is it something that maybe our ancestors give to us from another place? Say a quantum heaven, something like that. So I wanted to put it past someone who truly is at the top of their field. Someone who is looked upon as either an elder who is created at the highest level, or someone who is looked upon as one of the best of the best. Well, man, you can dig and you can dig and you can dig and try to get someone like that on a program. But it's pretty hard to do. I mean, you really got to have some contacts. Well, I was fortunate enough to get stevevai on the program. Stevevai is one of the top 5 guitarists in the world. He really is, depending on what lists you look at. And I was fortunate to get a lot of the Maestro's time, to be able to sit down and speak with him and pick his brain and talk about some of these spiritual topics, which I found fascinating that he wanted to dig that deep, because a lot of, let's just call them rock gods, don't want to go that deep. They think you'll think they're nuts. So I found it was an interesting interview. I really did. So let's do this. We'll play this interview first. When we come back from the interview, I'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of this past weekend's Michigan Paracon, which it was the last year for Michigan Paracon. So it was kind of a farewell to arms for a really great Paracon, a paranormal convention that was really one of a kind and really set the trend for every other paranormal convention out there. I struggle to think of one that exists right now that will hold up to it. And maybe there will be one that'll come around that will surpass it. But Michigan Paracon really set the trend, made it something special. You know, I mean, you know, you think of the New York Comic Con or the San Diego Comic Con, and they really are the standard bearer for comic book conventions. For paranormal conventions, it'll always be the Michigan Paracon. And to go away now at its height feels almost like you've been mugged in broad daylight. You know, you're surprised, you're a little beaten, but mostly you feel shocked and you feel violated. And I don't think the founders think that way. They feel exhausted. They feel like, you know what, we put in our time. We need a break. You know, because they start work the day after. There's no break for them. And there's not a lot of help either. So I think they're pretty exhausted as well. So it's a loss on both sides. It really is. They're grieving as well today. When they look back at the Keewaydin Casino there in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, they're looking back at the stages and the casino, and it's hitting them now that there's nothing to go back to. So there's some grief and loss on their part too. So we'll get to that part. We'll talk about that. And I'll talk a little bit about my panel and what great panelists I worked with this past weekend. Tell you a little bit about them here at the end of the program. It's all coming up here on Darkness Radio today. But first, let's listen into an encore presentation with Stevevai. We're talking about human creativity and ingenuity. Is it human ingenuity or is it driven by spirit? Here's Stevevai now on that topic right here on Darkness Radio. Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Folks, we all have our guests that we wish upon a star we could have on this program. Today, I happen to have one of those guests. You know, I'm going to give you a brief history because I want to jump into this very, very quickly. And I want to get to it right off the bat. 1986 was the year. And, of course, we all have our heroes. We have our music heroes. We have our literary heroes. We have people that we sit down and we wish upon a star we could meet. We have people that we wish that we could sit down and talk to, and we could pick their brains and really get to know. I had two in my pantheon, two that I wished I could sit down and talk to. I have one of them here today, believe it or not. One of them was Edward Van Halen. The other one was a young guitarist when Van Halen broke up. Yes, when Adam Sandler's girlfriend put on the shirt and broke up Van Halen, David Leeroth went his separate way. And he formed a band that the only way it could be described was a band that I believe out-rocked Van Halen. And in that band, you had Greg Bissonette, you had Billy Sheehan, and you had a young guitarist by the name of Stevevai, who I believe at that time, everybody in Met Center in Minneapolis thought came from another planet because he did things that we'd never seen before, that we'd never experienced before. And the solo in that Eat 'em and Smile tour between Billy and Steve was like anything I had never seen before, where they actually physically took over each other's fretboards and played together. And again, you can see it online on YouTube. It's incredible. Anyways, I digress. So throughout the years, what I did after I had heard Eat 'em and Smile, my friend Rod and I in high school went out and said, we got to learn everything about Stevevai. We got to know everything about him. And there was an album out there. Steve had released an album called Flexable. Rod and I began to like Flexable more than Eat 'em and Smile. Don't ask me how, but we just loved everything about Steve. Rod and I began to call each other flex heads. And we became absolute Stevevai nuts. That's how it started. My love affair with everything that Stevevai did started there. I followed Steve ever since then. In fact, I was at his concert that he recorded here in Minneapolis for video. With that, I'll stop my gushing about Stevevai and get ready to bring him in. Stevevai is not only a Zappa collaborator, heavy metal hired gun. In fact, anybody who's anybody wants him on their album because he makes it that much better. An experimental guitar virtuoso, and let's face it, a modern day maestro. He is no one else like him. He has a resume like Stevevai's. He was born in New York in 1960. Steve learned guitar as a teenager from Joe Satriani, who he just got done with a tour of. He's been a longtime friend for 50 years. He's transcribed all of Frank Zappa's complex songs during his time at Berklee School of Music. And then he famously joined the band later out on tour. And we'll talk a little bit about that experience with Frank Zappa as he got his chops with Frank. He then went on with davidleeroth, went on to do his own solo work after briefly joining Whitesnake. And with that solo work, folks, if you're not in on Steve Vai's solo work, you have missed a whole pantheon of work that will change your life. That 1984 solo debut, Flexable, covers some frenetic sci-fi and swaggering guitar fireworks, the Attitude song for one, and Little Green Men. If you haven't heard Little Green Men, again, for this program, it'll hit you where you live, folks. As well as Passion and Warfare, you've got Alien Love Secrets. You've got, so many albums that we're going to talk about today, but we want to talk about something else today. And this is what we're going to talk about with Steve. And again, I'm taking too much time with this intro, but I'm going to bring him in here in just a second. We're going to talk about spirituality and music, because I believe Steve gets inspiration from a place that a lot of musicians get it from, but he gets it from a place of spirit. And I want to talk to him about this today. There is something special I heard from Steve early on, even in that Flexable album, that I knew was different about him. I want to talk to Steve about it today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome in to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show, Steve Vai. Hello, Maestro. How are you?
Good. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Tim. Hope I can live up to it.
Oh, sir, you definitely live up to it. First of all, I want to thank you for all the music over the years, and I'm amazed. I didn't even bring up Crossroads. We'll bring up Crossroads later. I have questions about Crossroads as well. But I want to start out with this, and I want to bring up spirituality right away, because that's what we're here to talk about, is the spiritual aspect. And one of the things that I've gleaned from little interviews with you over the years is, of course, you've got natural talent. Those 10 fingers on your hand are amazing. They do things that other guitarists don't do. They're all over that fretboard, all over the strings, and they go places that other guitarists can't go. But of course, if you listen to the way your tone, your phrasing, the way that you put things together, it seems that you've come up with different ways of expressing yourself that other musicians just haven't found on a guitar. Now, I have to ask you where your source of inspiration comes from. How do you, when you get the inspiration for a song, first of all, how does it hit you? How do you see it? And then how do you translate it to a guitar?
Well, inspiration can come in many different forms, for anybody. I believe that we are inherently creative. That's at the core of our being, is to be creative. We can block that creativity, but you can't distinguish it, extinguish it, But I think inspiration comes to us in various ways. It can come from the outside world. You can see something or have a life experience that then inspires you to write a song or to create art or whatever it is that's depictive of a life experience. For songwriters, when I write a song, it can come in different ways. Sometimes I'll pick a topic, I'll pick an emotional situation, or an object, or an experience, and try to capture the essence, the emotional equilibrium of that experience. And then, because I'm a musician, I kind of understand the language of music. I can kind of, and you don't necessarily even have to understand the language in order to find the notes or the creativity to bring you to that place that you're trying to replicate. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. On the last record, Inviolate, there's a song called Teeth of the Hydra.
Yes.
And that was inspired by this wild guitar that I designed that had 3 necks that I called the Hydra. So I started thinking, okay, I'm looking at this guitar. So you're creating an image, and what does it look like? And what is a Hydra? And so I wrote Teeth of the Hydra. That was the inspiration. So there's many ways. Sometimes people are inspired by listening to other artists, and then they like that energy, so they incorporate it. I mean, they'll even play another artist's song and then change it a bit. That's relatively common. Sometimes a phrase will come and it'll have an inspiration in it. Something like, for me, a song, so many, Freak Show Excess.
Yep.
You know, that title came first. And then I thought, well, what would a song sound like? You know, that. So there's different ways, but the most powerful inspirations come almost like as downloads in us. They come as like, they're not intellectualized. You see, you can be creative in an intellectual capacity, which you're pulling from your knowledge, your intellect, your academic information, and you construct you can construct things, in my case music, based on, you know, the intellectual understanding of the rules and even how to break the rules, and I've written music like that. But ultimately, the most powerful, the only time that anything actually fresh and new and is worthy of your unique creative potential to come through you, it doesn't come from the head. It doesn't come from the little voice in the head. It comes almost like a download that was specifically built for you, you know, because it has within it your interests. It has your tools, you know, your gifts, your clarity. It and the telltale sign that it was specifically created for you by the universe.
Yes.
Is it has an enthusiasm in it. There's an enthusiasm for the idea. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, completely.
There's a knowing. There's like. It's a knowing. It's not an intellectualized meandering. It's a snapshot that comes almost like a download. It's like low-hanging fruit, and when it hits you, the whole thing is there. Very hard to explain, and you just then have to bring it into your inspired thinking mind and to manifest it.
Does it, when that download hits you, does it feel like an adrenaline shot, or does it feel like like when it hits you, you're like, whoa, okay, I got it. And it's just a matter of translating it to the guitar, translating it to the keyboard, translating it to whatever medium you want to put it into.
Translating it into any means necessary to manifest it.
Right.
Because the idea could incorporate all sorts of things. But yeah, and everybody knows what this feeling is like. You know, everybody has a gift to give. And your gift is those creative things that you do that feel natural to you. They feel organic. They feel right. They feel there's enthusiasm in them, and the evolution of enthusiasm is passion. You know, so there's a passion in it. There's a knowing that this is right for me. And it could be the simplest little thing. It could be, for me, it's music. For some people, it's art or cooking or writing, or it could be bricklaying. It could be for a business. It could be in organizing things. Everybody has some kind of a gift where there's a clarity in a creative process that feels natural to them. So natural that sometimes they can't figure out why it's so, it seems simple to them, and for some others it's just difficult,
Right. Yeah.
So this means it's natural, but all too many times we don't honor and respect these natural instincts, creative instincts, because we're bamboozled by conditioned thinking of the world, that it's not good enough, or why would you do that? That you could fail, all this miserable stuff. So truly creative people don't have a choice, though, because the download comes and they're just like, okay, I'm doing this. That's it.
What?
So those are the pieces of music for me that seem to resonate most deeply with me. When I see an other artist honoring their uniquely creative voice, we all know what that's like. There's a power in it. There's a quality. You may not necessarily like that kind of art or whatever it is, but it's undeniable that there's something palpable in it that's inspired.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of these days, more and more, those are the only things that I chase.
Okay.
Those things that come as compelling, enthusiastic ideas. Now, your question.
Yes. Okay. So
where does it come from?
Well, yes. Where does it come from? Right.
Well, I'm not an authority on this stuff, but I believe it comes from the infinite well of creativity that resides in all of us. That's our natural state, is a creative one. That's our natural state. We're in a very dysfunctional state for the most part, unfortunately, but that just has to do with the evolution of consciousness, So it comes from non-physical, obviously.
Yeah. And
the only access that you have to non-physical is you. Who you are is non-physical. You are in and of itself the creative impulse. And some people, that impulse is very natural. They don't need any explanation. They don't have an explanation. They don't know where it comes from. They don't care. They don't know anything about spirituality or anything. They're just like, I'm going to do this, And then some people will put, words to it somehow.
Sure.
But I think it's safe to say that, well, I think it's a fact that humans are, at their core, creative beings. And you're here to be creative. Well, you're here to express your joy, your creative joy. And here's the kicker.
Okay.
You can't do anything without everybody else. We're all working together.
True.
We don't see it. We're so blind by our egoic, perspective, that we don't really realize that we all need each other.
Yeah.
And we're all actually working together, and nobody is, separate from that. So that's good to know, and then once you know it, you start seeing the reality of it.
What's interesting about the creative process, if you're getting this download and you're taking this raw information in, and you're getting inspiration from a divine source, or you're getting this download, you're in a business that's surrounded by ego. You have to have ego to hit a stage. You have to have ego to put a product forward. You have to have some sort of confidence to put this forward into the world, because you've got a whole lot of souls that are coming forward and telling you what you think, or what they think about your product. So, and you have to have that ego to come forward and say, this is what I got, people. So in that, how much of your ego is
putting the finish on that message. And so how much of that mix is, I'm sorry, and I'll put the finish on this question. How much of that finish on that final product is your ego, and how much is the actual download of the message?
Well, you have to delineate what you mean by ego. Because something like confidence,
yes,
true confidence,
yes.
Requires zero ego.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
My perspective of ego is it's the thing in us that believes we're separate. Okay. It's fear, fear in any form. The ego is the dysfunctional perspective that we have of ourselves and the world.
Okay.
The ego, in conventional speaking, is represented as something that believes that it's greater than. I have a big ego, so I believe that I'm greater than. Well, that is an aspect, that's an attribute of the ego. The ego is very happy to be considered greater than, but it's also very happy to be considered the worst. As long as it's more than somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, you think you got problems? Let me tell you about mine. I have bigger problems than you. I am. This is the ego. So you can't separate the ego from your perspective, because the ego generates perspective.
Okay.
It generates your perspective. Now, I akin it to something like this. This is an analogy I'm going to make. It's not an uncommon analogy.
Sure.
In certain spiritual circles. Hey, take a film projector.
Mm-hmm.
A film projector has a light bulb in it.
Mm-hmm.
The light doesn't have, it's just light, right? It just emanates light.
Right.
And then that light goes through the projector and it hits the film. And then that film casts a picture on the wall. Well, the analogy is the light, that's the core of your being. That's who you are. You're the light. This is so very obvious, but it's completely missed. It's the thing that all religion, all spirituality is trying to point to, which is you are the light of the world. Right. There's no debating this because it's obvious. Who's looking at me right now?
Yeah.
You're the light. You enable you enable everything to exist in your perspective. So that's the light. There's no thought in it. There's just awareness, pure awareness. So when the light shines through the brain, which is the projector, it hits the film. The film is the thoughts in your mind. The thoughts that you entertain in your head that you actually are doing are conditioned thoughts that we inherited through thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Just we've inherited fearful conditioned thinking. It's just the part of our evolution. It's the ego. That is the ego. The ego is the film.
Okay.
Yeah. So that film then are your thoughts, and your thoughts cast the perspective of the life experiences that you have in the world. And so there's the analogy. So where does the creativity come from? It comes from the light. Mm-hmm. It's the natural, organic, creative impulse of the universe that's happening all around you. That created everything, that you see, created you. It's so obvious.
Right. Yeah.
The ego doesn't know that, though.
Yeah.
The ego says, no, I am separate. I am this little separate private I in my mind. This is a lie. This is an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this isn't like stevevai telling you this. This is spirituality 101.
Yeah.
So this is why all of your best creative downloads, they come as downloads. They come full and just like a boom. Everything is included in it. Of course, you got to work, you work through it. This is very different than intellectualizing creativity. When you're intellectualizing and basing your creativity on academics, what you're actually doing is repeating the past in different forms.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're only ever going to manifest something that's fresh, unique, and new through you when you shift your attention from the academics and the outside world to the listening inside. It's very difficult to talk about, but everybody knows what I'm referring to, but many may not recognize it when it happens within them. Actually, I'm not special in any way.
No. I think a great example of that is this latest album. You can hear the shift. I mean, not just from using the Hydra or creating the Hydra, and you can hear the shift in your music in this latest album. In that is it fair to say that you've become a more well-rounded composer with this new album? Is that fair to say?
Well, I think what happens with time and age, if you're young and you find your note, mm-hmm. the thing that is fulfilling to you, whatever that is. For me, it was the music and the guitar, and you just stick with it. I never let up, because. Yeah. I never wanted to. I love it. Right. I find the creative process of making music just so enjoyable and makes every day like Christmas,
Yeah.
And so when you don't let up, you build a creative tolerance in a sense. You start going deeper and deeper into whatever it is. From where you're at, from wherever you're at. So, and then also with age and also the success I've had, I'm very satisfied with, I never expected it all. Mm-hmm. So I'm very fulfilled by that. But at this point, I think also, as you get older, you can become less concerned about what anybody thinks about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yourself, your ego, because the ego was going to say when you go to do something, how, is this going to work? Is this going to wow people? Are you outdoing yourself? Is this better than everybody else? But you better be careful because you might fail. And then what happens if you fail? And so this is all bullshit in the head.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your creative spirit has none of that in it. Your creative spirit goes, ta-da, I got a great idea for you. Here, go do it. Mm-hmm. The end. And that's it. And you just find yourself doing it, regardless of what anybody, you don't mind. So, and I think the older you get, the less you're concerned about fitting in, and the more you're concerned about expressing your potential as a creative person. You don't want to be looking in the mirror at 85 mm-hmm. and asking yourself, well, how did it go? Did I exhaust all, desires, creative desires? Did I do it, or was I afraid for some stupid reason? Or you want to be able to go, yeah, man, I did it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, and I'm successful, because the right. Success, there's various, there's the world's idea of success, which we all know what that is. It's, you've made it, you've got enough money, people know who you are, you're established, you're successful. But that kind of success does not necessarily mean happiness.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So your level of success in life is actually measured by the amount of peace that you have within you. And the most fulfilling experience that you can have is when you are in the throes of your unique creative potential, with others too.
Right.
This is like a love, and the feeling you get from that, if you can imagine, it's fulfilling. It's really deep. You can't get that no matter how much money you have.
Yes.
That's a different thing. But the dignity, the comfort, the pleasure, the joy in expressing your creative potential without any excuses that's real success.
There was something Prince said shortly before he died which alarmed me, and for some reason, this hit me as a question I wanted to ask you, because I think this is probably the end point of every artist before they pass away. And he said, I don't feel like I have anything more to say, or I don't have anything more to contribute. And it was only a few months before he passed that he was like, I got nothing more. Do you ever see an end point to the creativity of Steve Vai? Do you think that there's ever, because there's these downloads, and man, I got to tell you something, Steve, every time I hear one of your albums, there's so much diversity in it. There's so much, and I think, where do you pick these things from? How does this continue to come out of you? But when I heard that quote from Prince, I wanted to cry, because I thought, how does a man who's got this much talent say, I don't feel like I have anything more to give, or I don't have anything more?
Well, he was right and he was wrong. He was right because that was his choice, and he had the right to make that choice. He had come to the point. I didn't hear that quote, but I would assume he came to the point where he felt, I've done what I've wanted to do, and that's fine. But the idea that you could run out of creative ideas is like saying that the universe is limited. It's not, and neither are you.
Yeah,
you're not limited. That's a fact. You can choose to be limited, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I even sometimes consider, well, I don't ever feel like I would stop working, because I know when the hands aren't, doing their dances, there's so many other things. I love composing. I love painting. I like writing. I like teaching. But there's a little part of me that says, yeah, but even so, Steve, there might come a time where you're done. You don't want to do anymore. You've done it. That's not uncommon. So that might happen. And yeah, so it's an individual choice.
Now, you had hand surgery recently, and even with hand surgery, you created the Hydra. You started playing the Hydra, which is like saying, well, I fell off a roller coaster, but let's tackle the highest one. It's a little bit of a daredevil thing to do. Let me combine this with an interesting question. First of all, how do you feel after the tour? Because you did play the Hydra on tour, which is I got to think, quite taxing. One, let me have you answer that. And two, do you look at tools like AI and AI-assisted tools, and do you think maybe I can use that tool in my music and make it a little bit easier on this surgically repaired hand?
Well, the Hydra, when I first conceived of it, that all came as one download, bam, just like that. And I could see the whole thing. If I was to explain it, it would take time,
Sure.
But it didn't take any time at all. for the download. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was just there. But I'll bypass all that. I've said
sure. Yeah.
about that hundreds of interviews now. But the performing the song Teeth of the Hydra, I knew I needed to make a video after I recorded it. And that's when I made the video for Teeth of the Hydra, but because my shoulder was falling out.
Oh.
Yeah, and I had to get it because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to play the Hydra after I had to get the surgery. So I made the video, and 2 days after that, I went in for the shoulder surgery, and I couldn't play the Hydra for 8 months, because I couldn't, you just couldn't do that. So I didn't bring it on the first leg of the Inviolate tour, which was the European tour, the European leg. But then when we were coming to America to do the first American leg, I felt, I could do it. So I started practicing it, and I had a couple of weeks, and then we got it on tour. And every night before I would walk out on stage, I'd look at the Hydra and say to myself, are you really going to do this? What are you, crazy? How are you going to, and I walk out there and I play it, and I'm, on walking on eggshells, because it's like a complete focus. I mean, you have to be, for me at least, very present. But then, as time goes by, the mechanics of it become more ingrained. And then the confidence grows, and the confidence it gets to the point where now when I walk out to play the Hydra, I'm like, okay, come on, baby, let's dance.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. It's so much fun, and so we took it. I took it all over the world. I had it on the Satchvai tour too.
I know it takes, at least in Minneapolis, it took everybody's breath away when you broke that thing out. It really did. It really did.
Yeah, it's pretty peculiar.
As far as AI-assisted tools, what's your view of AI and maybe even using it in your music? Is it something that interests you, or do you want to push it away?
Well, I'm always interested in anything that can serve me in a creative capacity. And I'm not an AI expert, but just for face value, there's a lot of hype, a lot of talk, a lot of fear about AI and its potential. But my thoughts about it basically are, and I don't know if even, like I say, I'm not an expert, but if you had let's say you had a database of every single thing that anybody has ever contributed in the digital domain. That means every text everything ever written and uploaded, this interview, everything.
Right.
And it was one brain. It would be the collective sum total of the collective consciousness of humanity, with all of its pros and cons and dynamics and emotional ebbs and flows and facts and fears and all that stuff. And it would be limited, because it could only contain what it was fed. So in my perspective, AI has the ability to take what it knows and combine it in ways that then create different formats of the same information. Sometimes a lot more educated, because it might, this is a fact. So that, however AI comes up with what it comes up with, the bottom line is it's a repetition of the past.
Yes.
Just in different forms.
Yes.
Sometimes very clever, sometimes seemingly intellectually stimulating and all this, but it'll never be fresh and new. So an example of that would be, this is just a crazy example, hypothetical, but let's say when Elvis Presley was king, and let's just say hypothetically AI existed, and okay, so let's just say back when Chuck Berry was famous.
Yep.
And let's say AI existed, and you went to AI and you said, I would like you to create something that sounds like heavy metal music in the future. You can't do it.
No.
Yeah. Humans can do it. Humans can evolve into it. The humans have they have an unlimited imagination. It's unlimited. AI doesn't. It can seemingly infinitely combine things, but it's intellectualized. So last month, somebody brought to me 5 examples of pieces of music where they went to AI and they used me. They said, give an example of what Steve Vai would sound, a Steve Vai song if he wrote it for beat, something like that.
Okay.
There was 5 different examples of what if play something Steve Vai like this, Steve Vai like that,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I listened to these examples and they were very interesting. They had idiosyncrasies of my quirkiness and all that. They were lifeless.
Yeah.
They sounded like ignorant McNuggets. It didn't sound like there was the driving soul behind it that infuses things with passion,
Right.
And with AI, you run the risk of being trendy.
Yes.
You see some of the AI art, it's amazing. It's fascinating. It's almost overwhelming.
Right.
And I remember when I was putting the artwork together for Inviolate, and digital art was very popular. And I look at the digital art and I go, my goodness, look at that. It's so beautiful. It's so, brilliantly colored, and there's a dimension to it. And I went to my Mikey Mesker, my art director, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. He goes, no. He goes, if you put one of those pieces of artwork on your cover, it's going to look ridiculous in 5 years, 10 years, So I'm like, of course, because it's too trendy. So what happens when things become too trendy? A human will come along and think outside of the box. AI cannot do that. It can only think inside of the box.
Yes.
And I don't even know if it's thinking. And a human can go from, if you just look at the passing fashions, they came and went because humans chose that. AI can't choose that. It doesn't have this, Now, I guess the big question is, will AI become conscious? And my thoughts on that, again, I'm not an expert. Consciousness can do whatever it wants. It can flow into anything. And it may already be conscious. I don't know. But the thing is, I doubt it.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. But consciousness can do whatever it wants.
That's true. That's very true.
But here's the thing. You will never know.
That is true.
Because the only thing that you can know that is conscious is you. And most people aren't even aware of their own awareness. You have to wake up in order to recognize that.
You're right, and most
you can't wake up for somebody else.
Yeah, and
you'll certainly not know if an AI bot is awake within itself.
And there are a lot of people that are way too trusting of the machines right now, which kind of scares me as well. But that's a subject for another day.
But here's the thing about that. I'll just say this: everybody is going to get out of AI what they're expecting. Mm-hmm. If you approach it with nefarious intentions, then you got a lot to be afraid about. The way I look at AI is, how can this serve me? I know it can. I know it's going to serve me. It probably is already in many ways, but, creatively as a musician, I'm really looking forward to that, because I look forward to anything that can serve me creatively.
Sure.
But I'm the one pushing the buttons. It's never the other way around.
Right. That's a good point, and a good point to go to our break on. When we come back, Steve, I want to talk a little bit about your history, both spiritually and musically. I want to talk a little bit when we come back about soul groups, because I think some of the people that have entered your life and stayed with you throughout your life maybe were destined to be there. And I want to talk a little bit about the tour you just came off of. I want to talk about Joe Satriani. And I want to talk a little bit about...
I'll try to make my answers a little more shorter.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And I want to talk a little bit about Frank Zappa. And I have one question in particular about Frank, too, when we come back. Our guest is Steve Vai. The latest album is Inviolate, which is out right now and available both on Apple Music and in other places. Vai.com is where we want you to go to check out everything Steve Vai. Steve, I want to ask you, I know Vai Academy was over this past winter. Do you have plans for a new Vai Academy over next winter?
Not at this time. I have to wait for an opening to come because my next 2 years are pretty slammed.
Yeah, they are. And speaking of, this fall you have a tour coming up with King Crimson. Did you want to give a quick note about that?
Well, it's not King Crimson, it's Beat.
Oh, Beat. I'm sorry. Yes.
But we're playing the music of King Crimson.
Yeah.
That's a glorious project because Adrian Belew and Tony Levin, who were in the 80s King Crimson, are reforming a band to celebrate those 3 80s beautiful King Crimson records. So Robert Fripp won't be doing it, but he's given it his blessing, and he even suggested the title Beat, because that's the 3 records was Beat, 3 of a Perfect Pair, and Discipline. So Danny Carey is on drums from Tool, and he's just a beast. You know,
is he ever
incredible. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to this. It's a great celebration of that music.
Yeah, looking forward to that tour too. So again, Vai.com for everything, Steve. We'll have links in the description of this program, folks. When we come back, let's talk soul groups. Let's talk musical history and spiritual history when we come back with Steve Vai right after this on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is guitar virtuoso, musical maestro, and let's face it, all-around great guy, Steve Vai.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. And we are talking about spirituality and music today. And I want to talk a little bit now, Steve, about soul groups. You know, on this program, we talk about people who are destined to follow you throughout life, maybe even followed you throughout past lives. I want to talk to you a little bit about your actual personal spirituality now. I want to ask you first off, do you feel like some of the people that have maybe been in your life throughout this life have been with you in past lives? Do you believe in past lives, first of all?
Well, our perspective of time is an illusion. So in order to understand like a past life, you'd have to understand the realm of reality, which is actually timeless, which is the now. Mm-hmm. The only spiritual dimension there is it's the now. And when your attention is joined with the now, you're entering the spiritual dimension. It's a timeless dimension where your attention is king. And your ability to focus your attention will gather any experience that your attention is desiring. So as far as past lives and things like that, in time, yes. In eternity, there's no such thing as a past life. And you're in eternity right now.
Interesting.
So if you want to talk time, yes, I think I have a strong intuition that speaking in the realms of time, which is an egoic structure.
Okay.
Yes, we come here in clusters, and we have understandings and agreements for working certain things out that for our joy and for our growth and for the evolution of consciousness on the planet. But to speak about these things, you really have to use language that can't describe the non-physical dimension, which is reality, not this dimension.
Okay.
You know, who you are, as I was mentioning before, and this is when once a person embarks on spiritual studies, religions, they all have their place, obviously, you know. But I'm talking about the spirituality takes the microscope from the outside world, it turns it around, and you're looking at in the laboratory of your own mind about yourself. And this is the study of spirituality is the study of the self, which is the study of everything. And once you start going there, it doesn't matter what religion or what vocation in life. You could be a monk, you could be a biker, you could be a criminal, you could be a saint. And people wake up when they're ready. And waking up, that term, enlightenment or whatever, it starts, as Eckhart Tolle said, it starts with the recognition that there's a voice in your head that you're talking to all day.
Yeah.
And that voice is the ego. And people believe that that voice is who they are. People believe that who they are is their name, their past, stories that they have in their head about their past, which are completely wrong. Their stories, and then they believe they're, we believe that we're our body. This stevevai right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all of that's just their beliefs. That's not true. Who you are is the awareness, the life itself. This is so obvious. Discovering that is part of the waking up process, that who you actually are is invisible in this world. It doesn't have a form. So when you start talking about past lives and things like that, you have to come down to earth, which is very limited.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I believe that we come in clusters, and you're part of my cluster,
Yeah.
and vice versa, and to work things out.
I'm intrigued because the more I learned, and I got to tell you, you've opened my eyes in more ways than one today, and I appreciate it. The more I learned about the relationship between you and Frank Zappa, you talk about the karmic exchange between people, and you wonder about where people fell in. And again, I know I'm using the structure of time here, and forgive me for doing so, but
I think it's impossible to escape.
Yeah, but I read an interview recently where you were talking about how tough things were on tour with Frank.
Yeah,
and how it was kind of like a vacation when you got on tour with Davidleeroth. And I'll skip the specifics. People can go online and find that interview if they want to find that interview. But to me, it seems like it's the taskmaster that puts the task in front of you that sharpens your iron. So it's the one that puts the task in front of you that develops you as a person, that develops not only your body, but your soul.
You do that. The others are opportunities. You can choose to be challenged by them or not.
Now, let me ask this about Frank. Do you feel like you took to his challenge, or do you feel like you could have turned your back on Frank and went a different direction? Do you feel like that was your choice, or do you feel like he forced that choice on you?
Nobody forces anything on you. You accept it or not. And I loved Frank's music. I really, it resonated with me very deeply. Mm-hmm. And Frank was a unique musician, and he had the inspired ability to recognize within an artist their potential, something that they could do that's extraordinary. And he would expect that. He would give you a format for that. So some of the really crazy things I've done with Frank were actually my suggestion, but he had he allowed the format for it. You know, he had the music. You know, he would say, "Can you play this?" Mm-hmm. You know, and he'd hand me something insane, and I would just say, "Yep," because I just always felt, I'll just learn it really slow and then bring it up to speed. How could you fail? I could do anything.
Yeah.
You know, it was an innocent, naive kind of a psychological position, but it worked. It works all the time. Whatever you believe you can do, you'll do, and what you don't, you won't. So Frank was just there, and he offered opportunities for me to exercise my creative potential, because he could see it. He could see that thing in me. All of his musicians had that. You had to with Zappa, you know. But the thing about Frank was he could recognize things that the rest of the world wouldn't really pull from you, you know, and they would never give you a format to express it. But he did. He used your special skills as a color in his paint box. Mm-hmm. That's why all of his records are so different, because he used the potential of his musicians. But he never expected you to do something that was out that you couldn't do, or that was in your comfort zone. That's a big misconception that people had of Frank. They say, "Oh, it must be so hard. He wanted you to play all this stuff." Yeah, but Frank wasn't stupid. He would never give anybody something that they weren't eventually going to be completely bulletproof, you know, because it's futile.
Right.
He didn't waste his time that way.
I get the impression, and I get a different impression than everybody else. I get the impression that Frank Zappa was really like an ascended master when it came to music. He was the guy who he had this knowledge. He wanted to give it to others, but he was like Master Yoda. He would put you through your paces, but the only reason he did it is because he wanted to sharpen you. He wanted to make sure that he was getting the best of your potential out of you so that he could push you forward. You would become the Master Jedi who would bring it to future generations. And he only picked you because he knew you were the one who was going to bring future generations forward and make them the best, to be the best that they were. Is that fair?
Well, I don't, you know, I wasn't part of Frank's thinking process, but my perspective was that Frank had creative insights, and he marched to the beat of his own drum, and he made no excuses, and he didn't expect anybody to do it for him, and his goal was to be as honest and intensely prolific as he could be, and anything in his purview was fair game to use. Whether it was an exceptionally talented musician, whether it was something stupid that people do that he could make fun of in a song, mm-hmm. whether it was politics, or whether it was the evolution of technology. He was at the cutting edge of that. So Frank, I don't believe I wouldn't assume that in his mind he was like, okay, I got this young kid here now, and he's like a sponge, so I'm going to fill him up with everything so that he could pick up the torch. And I don't think it was anything like that.
No?
Frank was concerned about nope, not at all.
Okay.
Frank was concerned about his music and getting it out there for the people that were interested in hearing it in the most colorful, intense, and honest, authentic ways that he could. And the fact that Steve Vai could play, my special talent with Frank was I just had the ability, the interest and the ability to play so many of the peculiar melodies that he wrote that never belonged on the guitar. But maybe, and I will say this, and you know, I probably wouldn't say this around many other Zappa musicians, but I was very young. You know, I started working Frank when I was 18.
Yeah.
And I started transcribing all this intense music. And I think he got a kick out of that. I think he got a kick out of me, you know, and I think he liked me, you know, but I was a tool, a happy tool for Frank. I was not designated by him to carry any torch. I could tell you that. Not in Frank's mind. He could give a shit about any of that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Enough. No, that's okay. Fair enough. You would know better than I, sir. You would know better than I. Let me talk about some of the musicians that it seems like you have this bond with that you use over and over again on different albums. I want to talk about a couple of bassists in particular, Billy Sheehan and Stu Hamm.
Yeah, those guys are fantastic.
They're amazing.
They're very different skills, but I'm very happy I get to work with both of them. I met Stu at college at Berkeley, and he was great back then. And when I seduced him into moving out to California, that was a real great thing because he was just great, and he did all that Passion and Warfare stuff and a lot of other stuff, and we had some wonderful gigs. And when I joined Dave, Billy Sheehan, Billy got me into the band because he recommended me to Dave. And Billy and I were like, you know, power twin brothers. You know, we built, you had mentioned before we started a solo that we built together.
Yes.
Smile Tour. And oddly enough, I saw that a couple of times through the years, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it that we put that much weight. Like, where did we find the time? And I forgot that we were that crazy and that we had that much, you know, ability. And Billy and I just like, you know, more, but way above and beyond what we've done together musically. We're just very close as people, you know, like brothers in a sense. But I'm sure glad I had the opportunity to do that with him in that band too.
I remember, and I could make the transition here if you want, but I remember sitting at Met Center in Bloomington at that tour, the Eat 'em and Smile tour, and I remember it was like you would arrive from another planet. In fact, somebody had said, "I don't think he's human. I think he's an alien," because just the way you played that night was just people. I mean, everything from the talking guitar part in Yankee Rose to, and David had you talk to the audience to, you know, with the guitar.
Yeah, I remember that. That was fun.
Yeah. And people were blown away. And I heard some guy yell Eddie Who, I mean, which might be a little blasphemous in some circles, but, and really they wanted to crown you the new guitar god that night. They really did. And it was because it wasn't just because you were fresh and new. It was because you were doing you and you were doing something different, and not only different and special. It wasn't just because you were fast. There was, you know, Yngwie Malmsteen out there, you know, there was, you know, the specter of Randy Rhoads. There was a lot out there. But it was the fact that you were you and you were doing things that nobody else was doing out there. And it wasn't just that, you know, you were side by side with Dave. It was that there was such different things being heard out there. I mean, you know, Ladies' Night in Buffalo had a sound to it that was just different. And even Hina off of Skyscraper is just such a different sound. And
That's beautiful.
I love that song. That song is it's still, I get chills when I hear it.
But I set up the stereo guitar.
Yeah. That song.
I think every guitarist, every musician, but every guitarist, it's inevitable that your voice is going to come through. Mm-hmm. You can't really help that unless you suppress it by just trying to sound like somebody else. I was never very good at that. I never felt good enough to kind of sound like an authentic blues play or classical or jazz or anything like that. So I just very innocently started looking for quirky kinds of things in my playing that I wasn't really hearing. And I was very young, 13, 14, 15 years old. And I had nothing to lose, and I wasn't planning for the future, Yeah. I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. I was just, well, I can't do that, but I seem to be able to do this, and I kind of like that. That's weird. What is it? And then I exaggerate it. And that is perhaps why, and plus I have a weird affinity for the absurd. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm very quirky that way. So I think those were my strengths. And as a result, my style kind of evolved very innocently like that. So there are things that I think you might hear occasionally that have some unique value.
Absolutely unique value. There's a line. Okay, I have to ask you about this line, because when I heard it in the ultrazone, I said that couldn't have been Dave's line, but it's in Skyscraper. And it has to do with God. You said, what's the word? He says it in Skyscraper.
Oh, you found that.
Yes, I did.
I'm very impressed.
Yes, I did.
And he ain't talking.
Yep. And he ain't talking.
Yeah. That's alive in the ultra world. That was a Dave. It's not necessarily. It's been around. God's. How does the actual quote go? Something to the effect of.
I just listened to it right before.
God only knows, but he ain't talking.
God only knows, but he ain't talking. Was that your line that you gave to Dave, or was that Dave's line?
No. That I heard that first from Dave, but it's not a uncommon phrase.
Yeah.
God only knows, and he ain't talking.
Right. Which I think is just the most kind of cool. Ironic, funny line, but it's
not true. But
right, it's not true, but it's a catchy phrase. And when I first heard it 25 years ago in the ultrazone, I went, wait a minute, it's one of those callbacks that just gives you chills,
Yeah, it is. I wish I came up with it. Probably the most powerful line I ever repurposed for one of my songs is from a book called The Course in Miracles. And it says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. I don't have the authority to say something like that. I'm not qualified. But the Course, in my opinion, is. And it's very powerful. So I pulled that. So we do, we do that. There's many things that I write that I don't recall hearing before.
Let me jump a little bit to the left, because a theme that's very popular all the way from Little Green Men to the album Alien Love Secrets is aliens. Can we get into that a little bit?
Sure.
What's the fascination with you with aliens?
Well, I think my fascination was not unlike anybody, not unlike many people at the age of 20, 21, 22. That's when I really started to dabble with the metaphysical stuff.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I was living in Hollywood at the time, and there was this fantastic bookstore, the Bodhi Tree, and they had every kind of metaphysical, new age, esoteric teaching you could imagine. I mean, everything from Eastern philosophies, UFOs, witchcraft, pyramids. So one of the things I became very fascinated with was pyramids and UFOs. And when I got into the UFO thing, I did a deep dive, started reading everything, started looking for evidence. Matter of fact, there was this one very interesting. There was a bookstore in New York City. I don't know if it's still there. It's called Flying Saucer News. And it was this very private. You had to find out. You had to be invited to get in there. And then you go there and there's all these bars and you have to, they let you in. They unlock the door. And they had these, I was looking for pages, which was to be the explanation of anti-gravity and how UFOs, ships were propelled, and it was a very interesting concept. It has to do with the gravitational field of the Earth and creating resonation, like feedback, gravity feedbacks or something, And so I had all these papers. I was very into it. Sorry to say, I've never had an experience with a UFO.
Okay.
But always would like to have had one. I have friends that even Frank Zappa mentioned once. He told me the story about, he said he saw a UFO. And a couple of friends of mine have told me stunning experiences that they had. But I've never had any.
No?
That I know. Not that I know of.
Okay.
I don't really, my perspective of it now is that if these, the UFOs exist, I think they're interdimensional as opposed to interplanetary. But I don't know these things. I don't mind either. Like if a UFO landed right in front of me right now, I would be fascinated, but I still have to learn this beat music and go on tour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's important,
Yeah. You have other priorities rather than focusing on Little Green Men. Inflexible, when you're talking about welcoming us to the age of light without heat, and then you look at something where the government this past year, or the beginning of the year, talked about coming up with a fusion system with lasers, talking about being able to power entire cities with lasers. Do you think you'd ever live to an age where we are talking about something like that without having that type of alien tech? Or do you think maybe just stevevai sitting there in a studio right now, do you think maybe we do have some sort of relationship with aliens? Maybe our government does?
I don't know. I might assume that if they exist, the government may know about it. You see all these things coming out all the time from the government, where there's acknowledgments and there's hints, and then there's information that they know that they won't tell. There's all of that, and then but it could very well be that we've received technology information that has inspired us that may have came from extraterrestrial. I don't know. I don't rule it out by any means. Maybe there's people that do know, but you could never discount the human drive for evolution. If consciousness, if it exists in a human, it exists in every life. So it doesn't exist any more or less in an alien.
Yeah.
An alien is no different than you or me, or anybody. At its core, it's awareness, it's consciousness. So maybe there's different civilizations that have evolved in conscious awareness, and if technology comes from there, it doesn't necessarily have to be spoken. It's intuitively understood because we're all connected in reality. We're all connected. We have no private thoughts in reality. That's an illusion of the ego. So you know when we're going to discover an energy source that's completely free, has no byproducts, takes no space, is infinite, and creates a paradigm shift? You know when that's going to happen?
When's that?
When somebody believes that it's possible.
Yeah.
When somebody believes that it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's how anything happens.
True.
Somebody says, why can't I create enough energy out of thin air to sustain the planet? I believe it's possible because the universe is unlimited, and I'm determined to discover this because I know it's possible. So that's a mentality. It's a direct knowing, and of course it's possible.
Yes. Yes.
We just don't, yeah, of course it's possible, but Steve Vai isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
very true.
He does other things with his knowledge of what's possible, and for him, everybody does. So there's going to be a person that comes along that's not so bamboozled by the conditioning of the world, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, no, I think it's possible, and I'm going to find out. Watch.
Yeah.
And that's when you're going to have the technology for all of those things that may already exist. I don't know.
Very true. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I do have a very interesting question for you, and that's this. A lot of your influences, there's a few of your friends that have passed away a lot of times, and I'm very interested on your perspective of spirituality. I have to tell you that you have opened my eyes quite a bit here, Mr. Vai, in this time we've sat together. Of course, Frank has passed away. Jimi Hendrix has passed away. And recently we lost Edward Van Halen. And I know you formed a friendship with him over the last decade or two. We always hear this from people who have had near-death experiences. When they go to the other side and they come back, they talk about the vividness of color. They talk about how wonderful the music sounds. My question to you is this. Have you ever wondered what the music sounds like on the other side? And would you want to know what that music sounds like on the other side? And would you want a sneak peek of maybe what Frank is composing on the other side, or Edward might be doing on the other side? And would you want to hear it?
Well, I can explain to you several experiences that I've had.
Please.
And you can determine whether you believe it came from the other side.
Please.
Back when I was from the ages of 20 to about 21 and a half, I was going through a severe psychological crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a state of very, very deep depression. It was a darkness. It was a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness that those that may experience that kind of depression understand. You don't know why it's there. You don't know what brought it on. You just know that you're in hell.
Okay.
And frankly, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because from it, I got to a point where I kind of surrendered. I surrendered believing that I knew anything. And I remember when that happened, it was an exceptionally intense attack of fear and dread. And when these things happen, you lose your ability to discern certain things, and entertaining oblivion seems like a good idea, in those states, because you're suffering so much, you just want out. And I got to a point where I was ready for that. And right at the last minute, something said to me, well, this isn't the answer. Matter of fact, it only makes things worse. You have to figure this out now in this life. So I kind of decided I don't know anything, and I all I want is the truth. I remember that became a very, very clear desire. I just want the truth. I don't care what form it comes in. I don't care if it's Jesus or Buddha or little green men. I don't care. I just want to know what's going on for real, because I don't know. I remember feeling that way when I was 6 years old too. I walked out and I looked around. And I thought, okay, what am I doing here? What's going on? You know, I was just one of those people. So after that inner declaration, strange things started to happen. They were in. Also, I was studying lucid dreaming. So I was having these extraordinarily lucid dreams. There were 3 or 4 times in my life where during these, and especially this one time, I found myself, and I've written about this in the liner notes someplace for Passion and Warfare, maybe not the record liner notes, but I discovered that this wasn't a unique experience because other people have it. And it's like the feeling of traveling at the speed of light. And there's this music that I could never explain. It's not like you're hearing it with your ears. And it's not like it's conventional. It's if I had to try to explain it, I'd say it's like every instrument in the universe, all out of tune, but playing incredibly intense, powerful, colorful. The colors themselves have the sound in such intensity and richness that it's beyond like overwhelming. You know, you have to completely surrender. And this music was just so intense. It was abstract. Just intense. And it came from all around, you know, and it wasn't something like, oh, I hear that. It was part of you. It became you. And unfortunately, it would only last for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And then I would be slammed into my bed, or what seemed like that. And I remember once waking up just weeping uncontrollably from this intense music that you have no words for and you can't reproduce it. And I tried. And it's a piece of music called Love Secrets.
Yeah.
On Passion and Warfare.
Yep.
It's in the moment, abstract composing, trying to capture the slightest little hint of what that experience was like. So I believe that music is actually the real music. And everything we hear here is dumbed down because there's the light, and then there's the film.
Yep.
And there's the obstructions, which is the ego. The ego obstructs it all. So, yeah, but that was profound. And I'll also say that frame of mind, I slipped out of it, and I never returned. You know, I found my footing and started my ascent to being a very happy person.
Explain that a little bit. What do you mean you slipped out of that frame of mind?
Well, I was in a very dark place.
As far as the dark place. Okay, yeah, I got you. I thought you meant as far as being in a godly place. So you
No.
Okay.
I slipped out of the depressed state of mind.
Gotcha.
The resistance.
Gotcha.
Slowly.
Okay.
Very slow. And I'm a work, you know, it's still happening. Is this slow process. And that's the way it is for everybody. It's everybody's on their path that's right for them.
Right. So, and I think you can tell, you know, because with Passion and Warfare and going into the different, although, I do have to tell you, when you get to sex and religion, it's almost like you're fighting a little bit. Is that fair to say? With that album,
yeah.
There was a little bit of, I know the path I need to go on, but pardon my language, it was kind of like, well, God damn it, I still have this little bit of rock and roller in me that I'm fighting a little bit of the dark impulses. Was that true? Were you trying to shake a little bit of the darker impulses off with sex and religion? And then...
Well, I was exaggerating them.
Yeah.
So after those early experience, I made Flexable. Flexable was a cathartic process for me because I was finding my freedom, I was finding my independence, I was finding my quirky joy, I was finding my love for life, I was finding the spiritual path for me. And this was all wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started to become a rock star, the ego came in the back door without me even knowing it, because that's what the ego does.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm winning all these awards, selling millions of records, making all this money, becoming very famous in this small field,
sure,
and of instrumental guitar playing, and which is a very small field in the music business in general, but the ego, it's everything,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So I was very intense. I was just an intense young man. And with sex and religion, I was trying to, I believe I was going through a period of trying to balance what that actually meant, the sex impulse and the spiritual impulse. It's not an uncommon quagmire to try to unravel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the sex and religion is sort of an expression of that. There was it's a lot of ego in that.
Yeah. And you can tell that there's almost a calming after that. I mean, with Alien Love Secrets, you kind of, at that point, you really start to come into the back to yourself, I think.
Well, certain things happened, like when I first started to become popular, so to speak. I didn't believe it. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand why people thought I was anything special. But then once it becomes overwhelming, you're on the magazines and you see even your peers talking about all this stuff, that, you start thinking, oh, maybe I am all that, maybe I am the chosen one, and all this kind of crazy stuff. And, but then the scene changed. In the 90s, grunge came.
Yes.
And basically, I experienced a character crucifixion, because I basically overnight represented everything that was wrong about playing the guitar, because grunge was a whole, there was just a whole paradigm shift in the music scene. And when you're at the top of something, you feel indestructible. You feel like this is never going to end. I'll always be there. But things change constantly. And when it changed for me, my style of guitar playing and the kind of music I was playing was not the trend. So there was a period of time where I couldn't even open up a magazine without literally not one music magazine where I couldn't find something, that somebody said about me that was just very negative. I'd pick up a book that, I remember somebody wrote a book and they were talking about me. It was just awful, So this was a crucifixion of sorts. And when that happened, that was so good for me, really, because I was lucky, because through it, I just kept making the music that was important to me, and that was Alien Love Secrets, and then Fire Garden, and none of that, none of the ultrazone, none of that stuff sounds like 80s music, really.
No, no, not at all, not at all.
Right. So I think so after the sex and religion, I started to find my footing a little more psychologically.
Yeah. The song Frank, that's about Frank Zappa. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of. I loved Frank so much, and something very interesting would always happen when I would leave his house, and I was up there all the time. He would you would be up there. We'd be up there for hours listening to music. He was a great host. I would always drive away feeling like I was 2 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
I just always felt there was something about Frank I loved so much. It just was a feeling of real comfort, Yeah. And I wanted to capture that in a song. So the song Frank, for me, is a very touching song, not because it's about Frank, but just because of the way it sounds and what it makes you feel, or at least me.
Yeah.
But when I was creating it, I was trying to create a musical atmosphere that could somehow resonate with the same way that I felt the love for Frank, like that when I would leave the house and I would just feel that amazing feeling.
Yeah.
So the song Frank doesn't have anything to do with Frank's music. It's not a celebration of his music. It doesn't say, I have a lot of music that sounds like Frank in a sense, but not the song Frank. But the thing, if a piece of music like that resonates with you and makes you feel good the way it does me,
right?
That's the essence of Frank that I felt about him. So that's why the song's called Frank, but it doesn't sound like his music at all.
No, I got the idea. I get the idea when I hear that song that it's about him, that it has to do with the relationship between you and him. But the thing that throws me off is right afterwards you've got The Silent Within, which to me is very much a song about the other side. Am I wrong about that?
Well, The Silent Within is about finding that space within yourself that's untouchable.
Okay.
That's inviolate, that has no suffering in it, that has no fear.
Okay.
It's if in deep meditation,
okay.
It's the silent within.
Okay.
There's nothing in it except intense awareness and joy.
Okay.
So it's getting to that. The obstacles to that the song is about.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe I was off on that one.
What was your perspective of it?
Because there's a few lyrics in there that make it sound like maybe you're going out of body, not within the body, but you take a trip out of body while
the body has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
in a sense.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So my mistake on that one. Again,
there's no mistakes, because however you feel about it is valid. And if we talked about the meaning of it that it has for you and the meaning of it has for me, within a short period of time, we'd come to the conclusion that we're talking about the same thing.
Oh, it could be. It could be
different terminologies.
Yeah, it could be. One last, and again, I've taken a lot of your time here, but one last thing I do want to talk to you about is one of my listeners is so jazzed to about this conversation we're having today, but we actually got into it about what your biggest solo song is. Again, a lot of people would say it's For the Love of God, and he's like, no, Tim, it's a different song off of Passion and Warfare. But a lot of he's saying it's the audience is listening, which is a great song. We all could argue what it is and what song is your biggest song. You could say it's Bad Horsey. You could say it's whatever it is. We could go on for hours. there's something about, and I knew there was a song off of Passion and Warfare that you had to have connected to spirit in order to take, that had to have touched you, because there's something about you, Mr. Vai, that I know is unlike any other person in this industry that's connected directly to spirit. I don't know what it is. Call it intuition. We'll call it intuition. We'll say it's that. But when I hear For the Love of God, I think to myself, that song had to have come to you while connecting with spirit, not directly from spirit, but while connecting to spirit. I've heard you tell the story before, but can you tell our audience how that song came about? Because I find this story fascinating.
Well, anytime we are in our groove, in our flow, we're connecting with spirit. All of your most powerful creative endeavors, you must connect with spirit. And what does that mean? Because it's just really kind of like weird words. What does it mean to connect with spirit? It means that you become completely present in this moment with your full attention, because that is spirit.
Yeah.
So with something like For the Love of God, okay, so I knew that I was finally at a point where I had the gear, I had the time, and I was ready. I just was ready for Passion and Warfare, and I was so looking forward to it. And so, song inspirations can come in various ways. Sometimes they just come, and you don't have to deliberately say, I'm going to write a song about this or about that, right? Sometimes it's just there. You pick it up and you go, okay, something's happening. And that's basically what happened with For the Love of God. I was in the studio doing something. It was many, many years ago. It was like in the 80s. And I was leaving the studio, and there was a cassette player on the bed, the couch, and an acoustic guitar. And something just said, not something say, I just had the impulse to pick up the guitar and hit the record and play. It was just an impulse. I said, I don't know, something feels like something's going to happen here. And I really just picked it up and totally out of tune. Pay no attention to that tuning behind the curtain.
Didn't even
so
hear it.
I just sang, and that chord came out. And the moment that happened, your attention, it takes you. You have to surrender to it. You let it go. You got to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And it will tell you where to go. And it just said, this guitar is all messed up. It was leading me. So I kept going with it, and it said, and I got the little cassette recording.
Yeah.
And you got to search. Sometimes you hear it in your head, but you don't know where it is. And then you do know when you hit it. That was it. I had to go back there. Now this one, I knew it was going to be a killer. I knew it was going to be the one. I'm like, yeah, there it is. There's getting goosebumps. And then it had to go. So this was like a little gift, it flowed, and it was joyful, and it was just, at the time, you don't know, is this great? I don't know if it's great, but it's doing something for me. Yeah. So that's enough, See, I got to honor these things when they come through you. You have to protect them because that's your gift, and that felt like something beautiful to me. And where did it come from? I have no idea. It comes from the universe.
Yeah.
It didn't come from my head, my intellectual thinking.
Right.
It came from listening in presence to what your inner musician, your inner melody maker is telling you. If you allow it, it takes you. If you get in the way, you block it. So getting in the way would sound something like this. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I wonder if it's any good. I wonder if anybody will like this. What if it, well, it's just just an E minor chord. This is not cool enough. What am I going to do? Why should I even do it? Nobody's going to like it.
Right.
Okay, so that's getting in the way. You totally disrespect God when you do that.
Yeah.
You're attacking God in a sense, because that is God coming through you. Because it's your creative impulse in its purest natural way. You connect with it, and then it wants to come through you. It wants to. And not just. I'm not talking about me and that song.
Right.
Talking about every decision you make every day. Yeah. All day.
When you sit down to put the title on it, or maybe the title came to you as you're writing it, where does the words "for the love of God" come in?
I loved this piece of music and the way it made me feel. It felt like hope. It felt like intense compassion. It's intense joy performing this song. And out of where did it come from? What is that? That was my answer. It was for the love of God, and because that's what it was. The song for me is it feels beautiful. It makes me feel uplifted. It makes me feel deep joy. I can't explain it, and I don't. It's okay if it doesn't do that for anybody else. I know it.
Oh, it does.
For some people,
it does for me. Yeah, it's my favorite song.
Yeah.
It's my favorite song.
So there's so much gratitude and appreciation for that. How else could I possibly name it?
Yeah.
At least that was in my mind. So the title was very clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. I just wondered if it was something that came to you, or if it was just automatically you knew the minute you played it that this is the title.
No, not the minute I played it.
Okay.
The minute I was playing it, there wasn't any room for a title.
Okay.
In my head, I was taking dictation, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then when I listened to it, that's when the title came.
Wow. All right. I know you've said it before in other interviews, and when you're playing it on stage, I even said it, when you play it on stage, you tap your heart, which is very interesting.
I was just doing it last night, or the night before, which is the last show. I do that when I play on stage. I try to psychologically open my mind up, not my mind, my attention, my heart. The notes that come through to the audience, because we're a team in this.
Mm-hmm.
I am a service provider, and I am there to entertain you and to lift you up the best I can. And when I do that, it's a natural thing. It's for others. It's like this melody is for you. And please, you came. Enjoy this. It's from my heart to your heart. I just naturally, I go like this. I can't help it. It just happens.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I was gonna go with ask you a question about the crossroads, but I think it's fine. You know, oh, you know what? I have one quirky question to ask you, Steve Vai, which, you know, we'll call this dessert on top of the perfect meal which you've served here. When you go to Google, and this is the most odd thing that I found about you on Google. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. In all the songs, they list 20 songs for Steve Vai. For some reason, under your discography, and this makes no sense whatsoever, they list one of your songs as Big Bottom by Spinal Tap. Did you have anything to do with Big Bottom by Spinal Tap?
No. I might have played on it. I played on a track. A Big Bottom, I think, is... oh, darn. It's a track. It's part of the Spinal Tap atmosphere, planet, you know. But I played on this one song called Short and Sweet. And it's like 9 minutes long. It's very Spinal Tap. Yeah. But it's really cool solo in that track. Big Bottom was another track that I played on probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a good memory, but it's short.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I of all the great songs you played on, I was like, did Steve Vai play on Big Bottom by Spinal Tap? I don't remember that.
I don't know how Wikipedia determines these things.
I'm a super fan, but I don't remember that one. That one's kind of beyond me. One of the things and again, as we begin to wrap up, one of the things I absolutely love is that you're looking at all these new players, and for your Vai Academy, you're picking all these young players that are absolutely talented, and you're picking them and bringing them to be teachers and instructors at the Vai Academy. There's a song out there called Ego Death that you contributed a solo to. And I don't want to stumble over the name of the group. Polyphia, that's right. The song is amazing. Can you speak to them in that group and their talents?
Well, they're sort of that part of that new wave of young, brilliant innovators that are evolving, emerging right now. You know, it happens every generation. And some of them are exceptional. And I think the guys in Polyphia, they're just unique. You know, their music, their style of playing. And they had that song, and they asked me if I wanted to contribute. And I said, well, yeah, let me hear the song if I feel like I can do something here. So they sent me the track, and I laid a whole bunch of stuff down and said, here you go. Do what you like. And they made this beautiful version where they came in and rebuilt their parts around what I did, and then chopped everything up, and then made the video and invited me on the video. So it was nice. It was nice to be a part of that. I really like those guys. I think they're phenomenal, really, what they're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. Well. Again, Beat is this fall, and you're going to be out with them playing the music of King Crimson. Inviolate is out right now, your album, and playing the Hydra, and my God, what an album. And that whole discography is out there. Vai.com. You can check out everything about Steve out at Vai.com. I'll leave with this question, Steve, and I swear I won't take any more of your time because you've been so gracious with your time and your knowledge. And you've made this almost 2 hours some of the best time I've ever spent with one human being in my life. I'm so.
Thank you, Tim.
I have so much gratitude for this. I'll ask you this question. Now, you've got 2 boys, and I will ask you this question. When it's your time to leave this earth, do you have one song in particular that would express, and your lovely wife, one song that would express what it is that they mean to you, that's maybe even in your catalog, or maybe you have yet to write it? Do you have something that expresses what they mean to you that you could play for them or leave for them to play and just say, this is the sum of my existence and what you mean to me?
there's nothing that I could create that could contain that feeling.
Yeah.
I've done it through my whole career. I have songs, so many songs were written for Pia, my wife, so many written for my boys. Any one particular, it really, I wouldn't be able to point to one. Nothing could contain that kind of connection that you have with family when it's a loving family. We have a wonderful, loving family. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that I do, I make a photo book every year, and that's served very well for decades. I go through the entire year of everybody's photos, and I make a book. And that will, in the future, I think, serve as a little respite reminder of the joy that we had together in life. More than a song.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of songs that I could point to, but they can't convey what you really feel. And my family knows that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you've put it in words and in pictures, much more than a song. I'm glad you're emoting and putting it in ways that you don't have to necessarily put in music, because sometimes if you just say it, it's much better than trying to.
Yeah, you can put it in music, but it's the music limits it.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's such a personal thing, and they know it. People that you love, the connection you have with people that you love. There's no words necessary. Mm-hmm. There's no song necessary. There's nothing necessary. It's all there, and it's felt directly from the other. And then all the songs or pieces of art or photo books, they're accoutrements to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sir, Maestro, you've taught me quite a bit today, and I appreciate it. I greatly appreciate it, and I want to thank you today for your time.
And good luck. You're doing great stuff.
Thank you so much. Stevevai, thank you so much for being on Darkness Radio and being a light in the darkness today.
Got it. All the best, Tim.
Thank you. I want to truly thank Stevevai for his time today and sitting down with me and being able to open up a true creative genius and see exactly what it is that makes him tick, what it is that he uses in his creative process, and sharing a little bit of himself with us, which is unusual. I can't thank him enough for the lessons he gave us today and for truly giving us a piece of him. That's unusual for someone who's that creative to sit down and open up and be completely exposed, for lack of a better term, to a completely nameless, faceless audience. That's the only way I can put it. And again, my gratitude to you, Mr. Vai, for what you did here today. I thought we did some good work. So I would love to do it again. If he is listening to this interview, it was the time of my life, truly. And one of those life goals that you can just, kind of scratch off and say you got to do it. Truly one of my heroes, and one of the interviews I always look at as one of my favorites. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing it. It was truly an absolute pleasure. So that's it, folks. That was one of my life goals down. So there you go. I absolutely enjoyed that interview. I want to thank Steve's management for getting that set up so quickly, so soon. And I want to thank Steve again for spending that much time with me. We actually, a little bit behind the scenes, Steve had internet trouble during that interview. At one point, the internet went completely down, and he called back to finish the interview, which he didn't have to do because we were an hour and a half into the interview. And he could have said, I've given the kid enough. But called back because I think he thought the subject was so interesting that he needed to finish it and felt a responsibility to finish it. So I really do appreciate everything he did. So there you go. Coming up on the weekend, folks, I encourage you to be a light in someone's darkness this weekend. Please
go out, help a neighbor, help a friend. It's going to be good weather, at least here in the Midwest this weekend. So find a neighbor, find a friend, and someone who can't quite help themselves, and help them get some stuff done around the yard. Help them maybe get some house cleaning done, because it's a good weekend to get some spring cleaning done as well. And get out and then at least enjoy this weekend. Enjoy life and celebrate life a little bit this weekend. Want to thank Tim Miley and Lauren Pearl as well for having me out last weekend to the Palmer House to raise some money for the Eagles Healing Nest, and for veterans, and for support animals, and for a lot of different causes last weekend. It really opened my eyes to some places that need some help. And I'm going to put a link in the front page of darknessradioshow.com, so you can go and help raise some money for Eagles Healing Nest to help some of our veterans who are coming back from wartime, who don't quite acclimate back into society, and help to raise money for to help train some of those support animals for those veterans. Please go click on that link so you can help one of those veterans and help to train some of those support animals this weekend. Just do it as a favor to your buddies here at Darkness Radio. That's it. That's all I got. Got some more great shows coming up here in the future, right here, both for True Crime Tuesday and for the paranormal side on Darkness Radio. I just encourage you to keep listening, and I thank you guys, love you guys, and appreciate you guys, and keep listening right here to the best in both true crime and paranormal podcasting. You're listening to Darkness Radio.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Steve Vai. Beat is in rehearsals right now. I saw the Instagram photo of the group rehearsing. That tour is going to be amazing. That's all I know. I hope you guys have your tickets and you guys are ready for that. It's a limited tour, so it's not a 50-city tour, and they're not going overseas as far as I know. So you better have your tickets ready. Vai.com is where you can check out all things Steve Vai. Figure out where Mr. Vai is going to be throughout the nation, throughout the country. He's touring overseas internationally as well. So there's always something new and fresh coming from Steve Vai. So check that out. So I promised you I would talk to you a little bit about Michigan Paracon and what happened this past weekend at Michigan Paracon. It really was the 15 years of Michigan Paracon, this being the 14th year because there was a year skip because of COVID, was really something to behold. You know, the year before, last year, was kind of pardon the phrase, it was kind of a balls to the wall year. I mean, anybody who is anybody, TV-wise, TV, movies, Netflix, wherever you've seen anybody who's anybody famous in the paranormal was out there the year before. This year, I think the organizers kept it to family. And what I mean by family and up-and-comers, and they saluted all of the ghost hunters this year, the original Ghost Hunters crew. And they celebrated 20 years of Ghost Hunters, as that's kind of an appropriate way to go out with the very last Michigan Paracon, because the very first one kind of centered around that topic. Or I think the very first one actually centered around ghost adventures. I think they had ghost adventures out. So Jay Hawes and the gang were out from Ghost Hunters. And it was great to see everybody, first of all, because Ghost Hunters is very integral to Darkness Radio start and to our first years, as we did trips with the Ghost Hunters gang for the first 3 years that we were in existence. Which is, it's always good to see everybody. You know, I got to spend a little time with Steve Gonzalez. I got to see Jay a little bit this weekend, which is always good. I saw Sherry D. Benedetti this weekend, which we share the same birthday. I don't know if you guys know that, but both our birthdays were Monday. So, I feel a close kinship to the Ghost Hunters folks. They're really good people. Dave Tango was there. It was good to see Dave Tango. Dave Tango is growing a very, very long beard, by the way. Very, very long beard. You could tell he's definitely taking some time off from TV. We'll just put it that way. You can tell the people who are not looking forward to shooting anytime soon because they're growing facial hair. But it was good to see Steve Gonzalez. It was good to talk to him this weekend. Got it. In fact, I think we're going to have him on the show here either in September or October just to catch up with him and just kind of get some details as to what's going on in his life and some investigation stuff that he's been doing since the show's been on hiatus. But the panel that I did this past weekend was an interesting one. And the idea was not mine. The idea was drummed up by Brad Blair, one of the organizers of Michigan Paracon. He said, "Hey, Timmy, I'm wondering if you would moderate a panel." I said, "Sure." He said, "I'm thinking something about the interconnectivity between ghosts, UFOs, and cryptids." I said, "Sounds interesting." So I started to think about how those three phenomena connected. And he said, "Your panelists are Shane Pittman from Holzer Files, 28 Days Haunted, and this new Searchers program, which is the group that Shane has, which is now airing on Beacon TV, which is a streaming network, paranormal streaming network that Shane is a co-founder of. Now, by the way, you can go to streambeacontv.com and check this network out. It's a completely paranormal network where they pick the most popular programs that you guys are actually watching. So you're always getting the paranormal programs you like, and they don't leave on whimsy. It's kind of a neat concept. So check it out, please. streambeacontv.com. We'll have the link in the description of this program, so you can check it out. So Shane Pittman is one of the panelists. Another one of the panelists is good friend Heather Taddy, Paranormal State, Alien Highway, and the new Travel the Dead show on YouTube with Katrina Weidman. She's also been on Portals to Hell, select episodes of Portals to Hell. So I was like, all right, Taddy's on board. Another solid panelist, very knowledgeable panelist, trained with Lorraine Warren, knows her stuff. So good second panelist. The next panelist made me add another category to this talk. That was Mike Ricksecker. And I think you may remember him, not only from Ancient Aliens, but from being on the show. We talked about his latest book, which had a lot to do with time travel and portals and time slips. So I said, hey, let's throw that in there. Let's throw in some time travel, some time slips. Maybe even a little quantum if we want. That got Mike going. I knew we'd get some interesting talk if we got Mike involved. And it was. I didn't ask a quote-unquote standard question throughout the talk. And I didn't want to because it was right after lunch on Saturday. It was right at 1:30. And we went for a good 45, 50 minutes and took 10 minutes of questions from the audience. And I was quite surprised that people were engaged and had excellent questions, excellent follow-up questions, and original questions at that. People were really in tune and engaged and following along and ready to shoot back just as interesting questions. So we didn't have logy people who had a lot of pasta for lunch. We had a lot of people that were geared up and ready to go after lunch. So it was good. It was a good talk. And all three panelists were on their game. All I did was play point guard. I just threw them questions. I was the monkey in the room. All three of my panelists volleyed back the ball quite nicely, and they took it to the hoop. They jammed it each time. So, and colorfully at that. So they were brilliant. I want to thank Shane, Heather, Taddy, and Mike for really sparkling in the panel. They really did a great job. So if you weren't at Michigan Paracon, come on out next year. Oh, no, I'm kidding. It's a little joke. You missed out, folks. You really did miss out. I'm hoping that there's some sort of video of a lot of the panels that were out there at Michigan Paracon, because there were some really, really, really great talks this weekend. I know there was a Robert the Haunted Doll talk out there with John Zaffis and Tim Shaw. that if you missed that one, I mean, boy, did you miss a talk. There was just some original stuff out there that, I mean, you guys, come on. You missed some good stuff. There's really some original stuff out there at Michigan Paracon this year. So, like they say, you snooze, you lose. Sometimes you got to take that jump in life. You got to check things out. I know there are a few people that told me this is my very first time here this year. I know there were a lot of first timers there this year. In fact, I think probably a third of the people that were there this year were first timers. They had to get to see it just one last time, which thank you. If you were a first timer that came out and you're listening to this program, thank you for taking that action and coming out and joining us and having a good time with us. It was greatly appreciated. So it's on to new adventures. If you want to have a new adventure, if you want to get out there, maybe you've never investigated before, in November, I'll be tagging along with the Ghost Stories Inc. crew up there at the Palmer House. Check out the link we'll provide in the description of this program for Jess's Ghost Stories Inc. folks and their trip to the Palmer House. It's going to be a Roaring 20s trip. It'll be a theme trip. So bring along period costume if you can, because there'll be some celebrations around that. You can get the details at their website as to all what goes on, but there tends to be some craft activity there as well. It's a different kind of trip. That's what I like about Ghost Stories Inc. It's not just bring your equipment, sit in a musty basement and yell at the spirits. It's not your typical ghost hunting trip. There's some different activities involved, which make it fun. And the people are amazing. That's all I got to say about that. One last note here before we start to pack things up for today. I'm treating myself to a birthday meal. Speaking of birthday wishes, I'm going to treat myself to a birthday meal this weekend. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's been a couple of weeks since I've been out to Jelly Bean and Julia's. And Friday night is that smoked prime rib. And I've told you guys about that before. It's dangerous. And I know you guys ask me, what exactly is a Boston baked potato? Well, again, I'm going to remind you. It's one of those baker potatoes, and they deep fry it first with the salt. I don't remember if it's kosher sea salt or if it's pink salt, Himalayan salt. I don't remember which it is, but then they deep fry it, but it's a healthier fat that they deep fry it in. It's a tallow and an avocado fat. They deep fry it in that, and then they pull it. No, or they bake. They bake it first and then they deep fry it? I'm trying to remember how it's done. I'll have to ask Corey again. And when they bring it out, it literally just falls apart as you cut it open. And then it's served with butter and sour cream, or loaded. You have your choice. Not all of them together, obviously. And then that smoked prime rib, kids. Oh my God. It's a 14 or 20 ounce cut, one or the other, I believe. I believe you have a choice of two. And my God, it melts in your mouth. It's amazing. And then they have a coleslaw, because if you here in Minnesota, you're familiar with tequila berries up in Coon Rapids. And keep in mind, Jelly Bean and Julia's is in Coon Rapids, so they're trying to keep up with the local tradition. But being that you're in a barbecue joint and not a prime rib house, they don't have the tequila berry salad, but they've made a coleslaw. And you get a big bowl of it for the table. And that dressing, let me tell you, it's got the sweet, tangy flavor with that coleslaw. And he makes a garlic Texas toast that's done on the grill, which is absolutely amazing. It's golden brown to perfection. It's got the right amount of crisp to it. It's absolutely perfect. Caps off the meal perfectly. And you would think a barbecue joint wouldn't be able to do smoked prime rib. Let me tell you something, my friends. You've never had a better meal in your life. So I think Friday, this kid treats himself for his birthday. That's what's going to happen. Jelly Bean and Julia's in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Look it up. Look it up on the net. jellybeanandjulias.com, I believe, is what it is. So, yeah. I think we'll include a link on the description of this program for that as well. So there you go. So that'll do it for today, folks. Tomorrow on the big program, Susie Ammerman will be with us. We'll be talking about hypnotic regression and hypnotherapy when it comes to alien abduction sufferers or alien abduction victims, and with people who are going through past life regressions. We'll talk about both subjects tomorrow. And we'll talk about some case studies. We'll talk about some pitfalls. We'll also talk about how Susie uses Reiki, and she infuses Reiki with that to help these victims, how it helps them get through their trauma easier, quicker, and with less complication. It's coming up tomorrow with Susie Ammerman from Opus. Tomorrow on the big program right here on Darkness Radio. So next week, we're back at full strength. We've got both Mally and Jess back. I believe the kids are back in school now as we pass Labor Day. So we should have both Mally and Jess back next week. So we'll look forward to that. And we got big things ahead. Have we got big guests coming up, I tell you. And for some reason, every book company wants to put out an evil book between now and Halloween. So get prepared for a lot of... I know some of you are a little squeamish when it comes to demonic and evil. But there's a lot of evil out there between now and October, and we're going to try and clear through a lot of it. So I know our good friend Richard Estep has a book out there on demons that we'll be covering sometime in that time. There's a lot of stuff coming out, so buckle in. We're going to have a heck of a ride between now and October. So it's going to be fun. A lot of fun coming up between now and October, so stay right there. We'll see you tomorrow for Susie Ammerman, for Mally Fox, for Jessica Freeberg, for Beer City Bruiser. I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow right here on the best in true crime and paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.